Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the WWF South Africa Living Planet Conference. For many of you, this is not your first time. I see a couple of familiar faces that we've seen before. So I would like to welcome those of you that have been here before. Welcome back. To the new faces, good luck. This is going to be lots of fun, very entertaining, very interesting, and very informative. And we hope that you've come prepared with lots of questions about our future, South Africa's future. My name is Augustine Walkel. I am the Executive Manager of Operations for WWF South Africa, and I'll be the MC in between everything. So to start off the proceedings, just some house rules. The bathrooms are as you came in through the foyer. There is a security plan in place in the event of evacuation. We'll give you directions if that ever has to happen. And if you've never heard of them before, there are people called conference criminals. Keep your things close. Apparently they exist. I've never experienced one, but keep your things close to you. So please don't leave your laptops or any valuables lying around. Just make sure you look after it, please. So a bit about the Living Planet Conference. This event is designed as a participatory event. So you're not here to come and download. You are here to think. You're here to be challenged. You're here to have questions. That means that you keep your phone on. So you don't switch your phone off, but please put it on silent. We don't want to hear your fancy ringtones and all the latest hip-hop songs that you guys have on your phones. But please keep it on silent. What we encourage you to do, and therefore you essentially are paying for your meal today, is to tweet. Use your social media pages. Say what you need to do. The other trend I'm quite fascinated in is how people tend to retweet, and that's fine. Please go ahead and retweet things. But we are more interested in your unique thought. What are you thinking about? What are you understanding? What are you listening to when you hear our speakers speak today? So please use your platforms, use your followers, and let them know your thoughts on what you're hearing. To join this discussion on social media, the hashtags for the event are hashtag LPC2018, hashtag AmanziAction. Please follow and tag at WWF South Africa as well, please. We also run a poll every year, so the poll is just an interesting starting point for the event, and then at the end we see what your poll questions are. So the poll question is on Facebook, and the Twitter poll is, do you think we can find a solution to our water problems? So if you can find the poll, and then please participate into it. And your options are yes, with collective commitment, no way, it's a hopeless situation, 3, it's not my problem. So if you can just have a look at the poll, participate in it. We'd like to get your first impressions as well as your impressions throughout the event. So you don't have to do it immediately. You can decide when you're ready to do it. So without any further ado, you do have the programs in front of you. There is only one change to the program, which we are all very disappointed about. It came through very late last night, which is that Dr. John Carney unfortunately could not make it to us. He is filming abroad, and his program just had him not able to come through. But you will all have enjoyed him on Black Panther, and you'll all enjoy him soon in Walt Disney's Lion King version as well. So we really do regret that he was unable to join us. So without any further ado, please help me welcome our board chair of WWF South Africa, Mr. Wally Moosa.
What is that? A dentist. Salim says it was a dentist. Good morning to everybody, and welcome to the annual WWF Living Planet Conference. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our, I'll try to speak louder than the dentist sound. Our CEO, Morne du Plessis, I don't know where he is, but he's somewhere hiding there in the crowd. We also have present here a number of the board members of WWF. I see Mr. Mabusam Simang with his gray hair sitting over there. We also have Murphy Morobe and Vusi Kanyele. We have Jackie King present. We have Tony Phillips present. Mark Reed, are you here? Mark Reed is here, and maybe one or two others who I don't see. But the rest of them, thank you very much to be here. And before I forget, I want to express gratitude on behalf of WWF to the members of the WWF South Africa board who serve diligently, who represent you very well in their own free voluntary time. These are very busy people. If we have to buy their time, we will not be able to afford it. So I want to thank all of you, fellow directors, for the work that you put in. It's really, give them a clap, please, man. They're doing good work. Yeah. And then we also have, we're lucky enough to have present here the heads of WWF. If somebody checking on that drilling? Somebody is. The heads of WWF from a number of nearby countries. We've got the heads of WWF from Kenya, Mozambique, Madagascar, Zambia, and Zimbabwe here, and hopefully you will have time to interact with some of them during the breaks, etc., about the wonderful work which they are doing. And this being the 50th anniversary this year, 2018, of WWF South Africa, we have the pleasure of the presence of the new international president of WWF, who is here with us today, and I will talk about him a little bit later on, so you don't have to clap right now. But I will ask you to clap for him later. As I've said, that this is our 50th anniversary. It's a very, very proud moment in the life of any NGO, any environmental organization, or here or anywhere in the world. To have survived 50 years, it's I think, a great thing. And I can say without any fear of contradiction that in every year of those 50 years, WWF South Africa has gained in strength, power, and influence. And today we are, no doubt, the most significant environmental organization in South Africa, and probably one of the most significant environmental organizations anywhere in the world. Our influence now goes far and wide. Maybe I could just point to, it's too much because Augustine, by the way, Augustine Mokel, I didn't acknowledge his presence here, who is our chair today. Augustine is the Chief Operating Officer of WWF South Africa, and he keeps the whole ship going. He's in charge, and he tells us what to do. He told me to speak for 5 minutes, and we never listen to what he says in any case, as you will be noticing now. But he wanted me in 5 minutes to talk about the 50 years of achievements, and there's not much that I can say in such a short space of time. But maybe some of the things that are close to my heart and close to your hearts. One of the issues that we've all been concerned about is the fate of the black rhino. And we all know about the dangers that the black rhino has been facing. As WWF South Africa, some years back, we asked ourselves, where can we fit into this thing? What is our expertise? And we worked out a long time ago that our expertise and our skill set does not lie in asking Augustine and Mornay and Mark Reed to carry guns and go and shoot poachers, because they won't be able to do it. You know, they don't have that kind of skill set. So we're not crime busters, and we're not security people, and we're not good at intelligence and those sorts of things. We're environmentalists, and we're good at growing the environment and protecting it. So we decided that we should focus on growing the black rhino population and keeping it expanding. And it gives me tremendous pride to report to you that in the past 10 years, we have established 11 new and thriving black rhino populations. We won't put up a map. We won't put up a map to show you exactly where these are, for obvious reasons. Sometimes Augustine and them don't even tell people like me where they are. But we've done that, and we can tell you that the black rhino population, notwithstanding the outrageous poaching that's going on, the population is growing. We are beating the poachers just about. And that's all because of the tremendous work that South Africans have put into this. And hopefully we'll continue with that. Second point I'd like to make is that we found that over, the land question in South Africa is a very vexed question, as all of you know. And one of the peculiar things that happened in South Africa that doesn't often happen in other parts of the world is that some of the most important ecological and biodiversity parcels of land ended up in private hands over the years. And as WWF, we, through various means, mainly through raising money, we've been able to buy the important ecological areas out of private hands and put it into national parks, provincial parks, and under conservation. And I must tell you, this is not something that has been done on a small scale. Up to now, we have added 400,000 hectares to the conservation estate of the country through this process. That's a bigger parcel of land than the normal human mind can even imagine. It's a lot. Technically, and it's only technically, WWF South Africa is the owner of all that land. That's just because of the way the title deeds work. But if we look at it from that point of view, after the South African government, WWF is the biggest landowner in the country as a result of which. And thanks to the enormous generosity of South Africans that we've been able to do that, that land will remain under conservation for perpetuity and for future generations. One of the areas I think that we've been able to make a big impact is in marine protected areas, protecting our coastline and marine protected areas. And a huge achievement there has been the establishment of the conservation area around the Prince Edward Islands. About 5 years ago, I think, that was declared a protected area. And this is of such significance. It's probably the biggest protected area in the South Seas that exists, and one of the biggest ocean protected areas that you have. All of those Prince Edward Islands and the surrounding areas. The total land surface area is more or less the size of the Free State province put together with Lesotho and Swaziland, something big like that. It's a very big area. And there's various other things, of course, that we've done. One of the things that we're very proud of doing, and I think Augustine and I work on this, is the work we do in inspiring and training young talent. So WWF takes in interns every year. Most of them are honors graduates or master's graduates from university in relevant fields, and then they do their internship with WWF, and from there they go out to do good work and influence the rest of society. This year, we have 50 such interns in WWF, and I think that's such a wonderful thing that we're able to do. So those are some of the things. I must just say that I've been thinking about something that I like repeating quite often, and that is, for me personally, and I like to, I hope that, I've been on the board of WWF for 10 years, and because of this sort of democracy in WWF, there are term limits. I have to get off the board this year, so I won't speak to you as the chair next year. Is that you? This is Augustine saying my time is up. He doesn't seem to understand that I'm in charge. But the sort of the general approach to environmental protection, and many people have different approaches. My approach, and what I've tried to bring to WWF, is that there are 4 pillars on which environmental protection rests. The first one is science. You're not going to succeed in protecting the environment without good science. There's no point waking up one morning and say, I love dogs. My pet dog got old and had to be put down yesterday. I'm now going to dedicate myself to protecting the African wild dog. Now, that's nice. It's an act of love, but it's not science. The science will tell us that the African wild dog needs protection and what we need to do in those sorts of things. But so we do a lot of science. And for that, we employ a lot of scientists. We have about 80 scientists working in WWF, South Africa. About 20 of them are PhDs, and we have some of the leading scientists in this country as part of our staff. So we base what we do on real data and science. When we say that the West Coast rock lobster population is in danger, that's based on science. And as you know, that we're challenging government in court now because we think government has acted irresponsibly in that regard. But it's based on science, not because of a dream that the chairman of WWF had last night. So that's very important. And we must never be ashamed about science. Some people, almost, of course you get the climate denialists, but you also get amongst ourselves the kinds of environmentalists who want us to do things because they've had a dream about something. And we don't do it then as WWF because we say, where's the science? And so we're not ashamed about being logical and rational and scientific and evidence-driven. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is laws and regulations. We're big believers that human beings are not necessarily predisposed towards always doing what is the right thing. And therefore you need laws and regulations and compliance mechanisms. That's very important. So we continually promote the strengthening of environmental legislation in South Africa and elsewhere, and other regulations. And then the third pillar is the market. The markets determine a lot that happens in the economy, in our lives, and in everybody else's lives. And if we think that the marketplace is out there doing its own thing, and we can protect the environment completely separate from the marketplace, it's not going to work. So we need to find market mechanisms that will promote what we are doing, and there are many examples of where we've already started succeeding in those sorts of things. If you take CESI, which WWF runs, which you can get an app now, which tells you whether any fish species should be eaten or not, and whether it's in danger or not, and those sorts of things. We've been able to use market mechanisms to ensure that a hotel facility like this will not serve fish in its restaurants that's not CESI approved. And so we've started getting consumers to use this. This has put pressure on the retailers, and some of the big retailers are now falling in line as a result of which, and hopefully this will also impact on the big fishing companies. So markets is important. So those are the four pillars, those are the three pillars, and the fourth pillar is people. We won't protect the environment, whatever else we do, whatever good science and laws we have, but if the people don't want to protect the environment, it won't happen. So we need the passion of people. We need to do advocacy work, encourage people, preach all of the time, and those sorts of things. And we're fortunately in a country which doesn't have a shortage of passion. South Africans are passionate about all. There's a march taking place every day about something or the other, and that passion is very important. So traditionally, this has been my thing. Those are the four pillars. I've more recently been thinking that I need to maybe start adding one or two additional pillars to this. And the one pillar that maybe should be added is ethics. Can we really protect the environment successfully in an unethical climate where there's fraud and corruption and bribery and wrongdoing? Probably not. And so probably the promotion of ethics and ethical values is as important to us environmentalists as it is to growing rhino populations and all of those sorts of things. And so this is something I think that we would need to think about very carefully going forward. The one thing I can give you the assurance of is that in WWF South Africa, we have the highest levels of transparency and ethical values. There's zero tolerance of any wrongdoing whatsoever. And, people have tried to provide sweetness and encouragement to some of our staff members and all of that, and they've burned their fingers in trying to do that. But ethical values is very, very important. And I think this is something that we need to look at. And maybe the second additional pillar we need to put in there is courage. Often, environmentalists have to walk away from something that is right because of a lack of courage. It takes enormous courage to stand up for what is right and to do what is right. Because sometimes there are obvious wrongdoers that you've got to face and stand up to them. But sometimes there's another type of courage. You would find somebody saying to poor people, if we mine coal in a wetland, that you will get jobs. And then we have to say, the mining is not the right thing to do, because it's going to destroy the environment forever and create only temporary jobs. And in the long run, the community will lose out. But in the short run, people are worried about their jobs. And it takes enormous courage to say to those poor people that it's not the right thing to do. It takes a lot of courage. I think cowardice would make us run away from situations like those also. So maybe that's an additional pillar. But having said all of that, I'd like to now introduce to you our new global president, who was elected very recently, about 6 months ago, president of WWF. We've had all kinds of presidents over the years. In the early years, WWF International used to try to attract princes and princesses and people with royal titles to be their presidents, just because the world took you more seriously, if that was the case. But I think we're quite a serious organization now. And the current president is a person that I met when I was president of the IUCN many years ago. At the time, he worked with us when we were talking about, you remember about 15 years ago, we still used to talk about mainstreaming, environmental protection. There was a term, mainstreaming things. So by mainstream, when we wanted to mainstream, we said we need to get the people who are running the banks and the global financial system into becoming part of the environmental movement. That would be mainstreaming. So we found this very clever young guy called Pavan Sukhdev. He's the guy who understands all of these clever financial instruments and does all of these financial tricks, things that runs the world, and to talk about how we can get the markets and particularly financial capital to the power of that whole system into protecting the environment. And he's been with the environmental movement ever since. He's now president of WWF International, and I think he would during his term take the work and the thinking of WWF to a new level indeed. He is well known in the financial world, but he's over the recent years also become very well known in the environmental work. He's done work for the United Nations, for the United Nations Environmental Program. I mentioned the IUCN as such. He's an author, and he's served on various other environmental organizations. You will know about the Global Reporting Initiative. He's one of the actors as far as that is concerned. And because today we are competing with a very important event taking place about 200 meters from here at the Centon Convention Center, the BRICS Summit, where our president is hosting the president of China and the Prime Minister of India and all other important people like those. We thought, well, we'll bring our own president to speak to us too. Pavan, please talk to us.
Friends, it's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here. And thank you very much, Valli, for that wonderful and warm welcome and your introduction, which made me laugh. And I really do remember those early days. And thank you and IUCN in those days for helping me along discover my path. Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone, to the Living Planet Conference. And congratulations to all of us on the 50th anniversary of WWF South Africa. This is a huge, huge achievement for many reasons. I'm here really to talk to you about some of the core issues that drive us to what we do. Valli mentioned that we need the passion of people. And I can say that this passion is what I sensed when I made the decision in, whenever it was, September last year, I think, to apply for the position of WWF International President. In fact, when I got the call from your headhunter, Valli, I didn't know why are they thinking of me? And then I received the documents from the headhunter and I started reading them. And within those documents, as I read, I realized that, yes, there is a logic here. And especially I was struck by one statement which has been signed off as part of the so-called Global Compact by all of the 34 national organizations of WWF. And that statement is something that I found was so powerful and so moving, it literally blew me away. It is part of the mission statement, and it says that we shall mobilize, engage, and inspire hundreds of millions of people in the pursuit of our mission. And I think that belief that we are here, Valli, as you said, to drive and use the passion of people, I think that is wonderful. The reason I say that from my own experience is that I have personally been involved in trying to understand and trying to do what I can as one small individual in this space to address this basic challenge that we understand how valuable our mother is. Nature is also our mother. We understand that, and yet look what we are doing to her. Right? And the reason that is happening is the nature of our economies, and the reason that is happening is somehow our unwillingness to act on what we understand to be a defective economic model. Our politics, our business are unanimous in saying, yes, we have a problem. And yet, action is missing. So we have clearly a huge challenge where behaviors have to change, systems have to change, people have to change, politics have to change, and business has to change. And without all these changes, how are we going to achieve a world in which people live in harmony with nature, which is absolutely fundamental, a statement of our own vision? I feel that the need to recognize the importance of people and not to de-emphasize or, if you like, disrespect the importance of all these other institutions, of government, of business, of civil society, and so on. I think that need to recognize the importance of people power will become ever more important over the next few years. Because seriously, I believe that governments have gone as far as they can. Businesses are not moving because they are more powerful today in today's world than the governments are. And businesses are not moving because the pressure is not on them. Last night at a meeting that you people had organized at JIBS, at the business school, I was talking about this theme. And I hope I was able to explain the importance I attach to the world of business. But even that world is not going to move until people move that world. So the need for engaging people is not just a nice to have, it is actually core to us. It's one part of the four things, Valli, that you mentioned in your introduction, but it's absolutely core to our mission statement. We seriously must engage, inspire, and mobilize those hundreds of millions of people. We have to be ambitious, we have to go big, and we have to be out there. This, my friends, is about activism. Now, when we say activism, there are all kinds of emotions that come into people's minds, all kinds of impressions that come into our minds. Some say, oh, there we go again with this green talk. You know, this is really about development. How can you talk about activism? How can you talk about green? Can't you see poverty? Don't you understand? Yes, I do. I'm from India. There are more poor people in India than anywhere else in the world. I seriously do understand poverty. I've lived with it most of my life. But the solutions to poverty are not to destroy the wealth of the poor. The solutions to poverty is not to deplete and destroy the GDP of the poor, as we called it, as I wrote about it in The World of Teeb, but actually to enhance it. And nature is the GDP of the poor. That's something that we need to communicate, understand, and in simple terms, through people. We need to be able to harness the energy that people bring. We need to use it, and we need to be active, and that is activism. And sometimes I also feel that those who are in the environmental space are less optimistic today than I feel that they ought to be. After all, why would I, as a person with a business to run and board seats in several places, which I have resigned from, by the way, because there are conflicts between having those and WWF. Why would I choose this? Because I think, Valli, that we are in the right place. I think we are, with our 5.4 million members and our 85 different organizations around the world, and the huge networks of partnerships that we already have and will enhance as a result of these practice groups that we have created, stretching our reach outside of WWF, I think we are in a better place to reach those hundreds of millions of people than any other organization on this planet that is working in our space. That is the reason I am so optimistic. But when I come across activists, and I respect them, I find sometimes that they are being defeatist. They're almost saying that, we are here for the good fight. We will fight no matter what happens, and then I know what's coming next. We are going to lose. And then I say, stop, hang on. If you are on the losing team, then I'm in the wrong place, right? Because I don't belong to losing teams. And I challenge them to say, why are you saying this? And I remind them of things 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and explain that today we have a better opportunity to make change happen. Greater awareness, more access, more success stories to talk about. You just mentioned the 11 new locations of black rhino, was a species which was considered at one point on the brink of extinction. Why are we being defeatist? And sometimes I find the wrong reason for being defeatist. I kind of respect that, yes, this is a difficult life. If you've been an environmentalist, if you've been in the field, if you've been a ranger, if you've been fighting poachers, if you've seen your friends die, of course you will feel desperate, and of course you will feel like not willing to live. And I can sense that defeatism. But there is another kind of defeatism which I don't like, which is, oh, but if we solve this problem, what's our job? Trust me, there are jobs after success, just as there are jobs before success. There will be a job to maintain what you've achieved. Huge, because pressures will not disappear. Pressures against the free lunch on nature that has been going on for the last 50 years, 60 years, will not disappear. So it is important for us to succeed, to be activists but not defeatists, so that we can do our next jobs, which is to conserve what we have achieved. Those 11 new locations will need protection before long. Who's going to do that? So we need to look at activism positively and never, ever accept the sort of green label and the kind of, tongue-in-cheek little whispers around the corner, little niggling doubts that people have, and those little jokes that they will share behind your back. Ignore them. Hear this from me. They don't know what they are talking about. You do. So always go out there with the confidence that if you are taking an approach which is activist, you're doing it, as Valli pointed out, on the basis of solid science, on the basis of understanding that there are markets which will equilibrate demand and supply, on the basis of knowing that there are rules and regulations, and yes, maybe they are not perfect, but you're working on them, and you will have better rules and regulations for the future. Be activist, be engaged, but with these understandings. And don't ever take a sense away from people who are sniggering or laughing or smiling behind your back that somehow they are right and you're wrong, because that is absolutely not the case. You are the winning team. Please remember, if you weren't, I wouldn't be with you. Activism is not easy, and I think we need to rely on everyone who is willing to participate, but especially, in my opinion, the youth. Now, I have a few examples here of youth because I was privileged to be able to give away in my very first annual conference, this was in May, 2 prizes to 2 young ladies who were given the President's Award for just being outstanding achievers on the space of the environment. So I'll talk a bit about them. I also want to briefly mention, because we are talking here in this conference today about water, the kind of problems that we face with water are, of course, perhaps more painfully felt here in South Africa, perhaps most widely understood and best appreciated in a town like Cape Town or a city like Cape Town and in Joburg. But actually, they're global problems. Because I see these, I work a lot with the Yarra Valley Water Company, which is the largest water utility in Australia. They are the water utility of Melbourne City. They've had problems as well. That's a developed country. That's a country which has had serious issues with fresh waters. The Murray-Darling Basin has gone dry at points. The river literally doesn't flow down to the sea. So we are not, yes, we are probably the first ones to experience this in South Africa in a serious way and rise to the challenge and hopefully manage it. But we are not the only ones. And I think this is a global issue, so I'm glad that today WWF and this Living Planet Conference is focusing on this theme during the day. And there are other themes which are connected to this, because connected to the theme of water is the theme of food and agriculture. And equally there, we have massive problems. So I want to give some examples, one example in particular from my country in India, where I think people, again, through a kind of activism, have actually succeeded. And I wish them well, and I'll talk about that. And then finally, I want to talk about another young lady who won the President's Award, who's so young that I think I'll leave it to her to talk about her. I've got a little video. So let me begin with, firstly, with Nina Gwalinga, who was a lady who's 24, a young mother, and she is an indigenous leader. Here you see her wearing her traditional head paint. And she's a leader in the Quechua community in Ecuador. Her challenge was the protection of the Ecuadorian Amazon. And it was being destroyed due to several pressures coming from the mining industry, which was mining upstream. And some of you may find this a familiar theme. And because of the mining upstream, there was significant risk of pollution and actual pollution taking place. And she challenged her government's line on development. So what she says, and I'm quoting her, is that who decides what is development? Who was asked what is development? Her point was that her people need to decide how to live. And if they want to live without river pollution, and if they want to live with forests and without land degradation, then that's a choice they've made which must be respected. It is their land, it is their water. That's the point that she was making. And I found her very inspiring, and as we were leaving, she actually said that, I have a request. And I said, what? And she says, you, that is WWF, should partner more with local NGOs and local people. And I said, well, I'm new, but I thank you for that suggestion. And I think that's something that we should all take away. And I know that you here in WWF, Mornay and colleagues, are doing that, and in fact are raising money for local NGOs and local people. I'm very pleased to hear that. Nina talked about the demand that she has for the legal recognition of what she calls the living forest, the idea that there is a biome which has to be respected as a life form within which their communities live. And she thinks of her strengths as two. She says, it's the spiritual connection with the forest, and it's my son. And I think in that beautiful, simple statement, she captures what it's about. It's about the life of the spirit, and it's about the next generation. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is Nina Gwalinga. I want to now spend a few minutes talking about the world of agriculture. It's not widely recognized how deep the problem of our food is in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have still 800 million people who go to bed hungry. At the same time, we have more than 2 billion people who, because of our food system and its incentives, are overweight, of whom 600 million are actually clinically obese. Today, we have a problem where the food system uses up 70 to 80 to 90 in some places % of the water supply, even though it doesn't need to, because of the type of agricultural practices that we follow. Today, we have a problem where, according to the Global Nutrition Report of 2016, and that's a study done by international scientists, our diets have become the main burden of disease. Today, we have a food system which, if you include the deforestation that happens upstream, and if you include the methane emissions from the farm, and if you include the packaging and the waste is actually, if you count waste, is the third biggest emitter after China and America, if it were a country. If you include all that, today's food system accounts for between 47 and 53% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. This is our food system. And when I say, therefore, that the food system is broken, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. It is broken beyond belief in more dimensions than one. But how to fix this? This is the kind of challenge to which this gentleman on the left-hand side and the entire community of villages in Andhra Pradesh, which is a state in India, rose up to meet. Vijay Kumar I'm proud to have him as a friend. He is a retired civil servant. One of his frustrations as the Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh was that people were not understanding that they had the wrong food system. He had come to the same conclusions that I had from a totally different perspective. And he felt that there was an available opportunity to change the food system because he could see a few examples of success in India, elsewhere, and so on. But his own department would not listen to him. So he leveraged the network that he had created of housewives and of self-help groups for some other work he had done for women's emancipation and women's progress in his state. He leveraged that to create an alternative, to develop food being grown in a different way, a system called zero-budget natural farming. You can probably see it in the slides here, but Andhra Pradesh is a state of 55 million people. It is coastal. It's a large belt. It's about 400 miles long. It's about 50 to 100 miles wide. And it's mainly agricultural lands where two rivers meet, but both rivers are affected by water supply problems, and therefore they have drought. They have had 3 years of drought. So big problems, huge challenges. And these people rose to that challenge by saying, let's go to a new system where we recognize that actually agriculture is not about chemistry, it's about biology. Let us reinstate soil biology. Let us see if we can make use of natural products that we have, literally, waste food, yogurt, cow's urine, cow dung, et cetera, use that, feed it so that bacterial content increases and spray it across. And that's an old technique, apparently, that they had rediscovered. This is an ancient technique which had been there, had been destroyed, and had, as a result, depleted soil biology completely. I described this to the UK Environment Minister, they call the DEFRA Secretary, in the following terms, because he's a man of learning, and he's a writer. So I said to him, Mr. Gove, Michael Gove is his name, Mr. Gove, the way to understand this is to think of Tantalus. He said, Tantalus? Why? I said, King Tantalus from the Greek mythology. King Tantalus basically was punished for his pride by the gods by putting him in a swimming pool of wine with grapes growing above him. But when he felt thirsty and stooped down to drink, the wine would go down, the swimming pool would go down. And when he stretched up to reach the grapes would move up, hence tantalizing. Today's plant in today's chemical agricultural system is like King Tantalus. It is living in a soil which is rich with nutrients, but it does not have the microbes, the funguses, the nematodes, and the worms to convert that into soluble chemicals which it can absorb through its root systems. Today's plant is still exuding the 40% of the food that it makes in its leaves into the soil to feed bacteria which have died, funguses which have disappeared, nematodes which are no longer there. Because we've killed them off. We have killed the food delivery mechanism of the plants that we grow to eat. And we call ourselves Homo sapiens. Thinking man. I think Homo stultus would be more appropriate in this case. So these poor people, these farmers, understood this in a fundamental way, and they decided to go with the change. One after the other, Vijay Kumar convened groups of farmers, literally, by making them experiment with these new systems which he had learnt about. And this is a retired civil servant doing this, by the way, one man. Retired civil servant with his old friends from his old civil service days. And gradually, over the last 6-7 years, this movement has grown to 160,000 farmers. They cover 185,000 hectares. In farmland, which is growing everything, it's an amazing success story. And the way he grows this is to take master farmers, I'd read about all this and in the notes that he sent me, to take people who've done really well, transplant them bodily to another village, pay them the same amount of money on average that they'd get by leaving their farms. And that's what the funding is. The government provides funding for this. And that's basically the biggest and largest and actually only expenditure, because everything else is available on site. And so at this meeting, which is a photograph I took, at this meeting, my first meeting with his group. Now I've had 4 meetings. And at this location, I was still new into this system, and I was still trying to figure out what's going on. And so I was thinking, like, so where's the master farmer? So I leaned over to Vijay, so where's the master farmer? He smiled, he says, you're talking to her, my friend. The master farmer was that lady wearing a red sari, and she was explaining what she was doing, and she was the expert. She had come from another village. So this is the system that they have introduced on every type of product that they have grown. Examples here are rice and groundnut. You get higher yield on their system as against the system that is used earlier. They don't use chemical pesticides. They use the neem tree and the leaf of the neem tree, and they mulch it, and they convert it into a spray, which is then apparently more effective than some of the chemical pesticides. And they even have small village shops like this one where they sell it amongst each other, because not everyone can have the means of making these locally homemade pesticides, if you like. They have measured the performance of their system using 5 meter by 5 meter plots over the last 4 years. And this is a graph they've drawn on the rice that is grown, 8 different varietals of rice, each one grown using their system, that is the zero budget natural farming, no costs of pesticides, no costs of fertilizers. The yield is higher in their system than it is in the clinical, the chemical system, the traditional one. If you meet Vijay today and ask him, what is the single reason for his success, he says, it's the people. People rose to the challenge because they were hungry, they were suffering, drought was destroying them, and now none of that is the case because they've managed to create a system which uses mulching, uses natural inputs, gives them higher yield, reduces their costs, and they make more money. And when I ask these people, and I've done this 4 times, is what is the one thing that is most important? The consistent answer is health, sir. It's about our health, it's about the soil's health, and about your health, because you may eat the food that we grow. The farmers understand this, they get this. And to me, the other thing that this whole experiment has achieved, and I wish them success because now it's been taken up by the state as a state strategy, is that it has truly placed women at the center. This lady is also a master farmer. A picture I took, you can see that she's talking and she's been asked to speak to others in a new area where the system isn't working. And you can see that the audience consists almost entirely of men. The radiance, the power, and the joy that she had in communicating her success was just absolutely mind-blowing. I took this picture and I've treasured it because it's something that reminds me of what is possible when people rise to the challenge, when they do what's available to them. Nature comes back when you follow the kind of farming systems. I grew up as a child in India, and there were dragonflies. For the last 25 years of my various visits to India, I haven't seen dragonflies until I went to Andhra Pradesh to their farms, and I had to literally sort of swat them away. It was just crowded with dragonflies. To me, the dragonfly is an amazing indicator of the success of biodiversity, which means not only are we not killing it off, we're actually regenerating it as a result of that. And I think that's an amazing success. So an initiative born of people's interest to solve their own problems, supported by an old civil servant with his understanding of how systems work, and resulting in power for women and the return of nature. An amazing success story. And finally, I want to leave you with another one, which, again, I was privileged to be able to award this young girl, although she and her parents couldn't travel all the way to Cartagena, where we had the ceremony, because they live in Belize. This is Madison Edwards, 12 years old, who, and I will leave it to her to explain in her words what she did, actually began an internet campaign to prevent oil drilling literally next to where she lives, which is the location of a World Heritage Site reef, coral reef. So please hear this in the words of 12-year-old Madison Edwards.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to thank the president of WWF and the WWF organization for this special recognition. I'm incredibly honored to be mentioned for my activism at such an important conference for the conservation of our planet. Less than a mile behind me is home to one of the most diverse marine ecosystems found anywhere, the Belize Barrier Reef. It still amazes me to think that one day there were ships so close to my home searching for oil and people willing to risk it all for money. I had never seen dolphins in the wild before, and if these big seismic ships hurt them, I may never get to see them. I was angry and I wanted to help. But hashtag school, hashtag homework, and hashtag my parents were going to the town meeting without me. This was the moment I realized I could use social media to let people know they needed to actually do something. Never underestimate the power of an angry child on the internet yelling at the world, "Leave my dolphins alone!" My town is fierce though. Within hours of the ships being spotted, hundreds came together and caused an uproar, shutting them down. There would be no offshore oil drilling in our waters this time. What about later though? This became such an overwhelming thought for our little nation by the sea. Discussions about it flooded social media, and people demanded a moratorium against offshore oil. I went on my own quest to learn about the Belize Barrier Reef. I snorkeled it north to south on a week-long sailing adventure to learn as much as I could about it. I am by no means an expert on the reef now, but wow, I experienced an entirely different world under there. I finally got to see my dolphins. That was pretty cool. I learned how much we depend on coral reefs, like literally, for oxygen. The reef needed us to fight for it, and thanks to WWF's Saving Our Shared Heritage campaign, this fight became global, and 450,000 emails were sent to our Prime Minister. Of course, I had to write my own letter, and I was fortunate enough to deliver it along with the WWF team. I live where people dream of vacationing, where dolphins, sea turtles, and manatees share their home with us. As Belizeans, we do not take the Belize Barrier Reef for granted. It's why I cannot accept this recognition without mentioning the people of Belize, and especially my San Pedrano Sierra Burger ski. I am very proud of us, Belize. A special thank you from all of us here in Belize to all the people around the world who shared our story and helped save our World Heritage Site. Together, our voices were louder, and Belize now has a moratorium against offshore oil in place. Big panda hugs to Reese, Miss Nadia, and Elena from WWF for your constant encouragement for my activism. Mom and Dory, without your support, I wouldn't be here. I'd like to encourage other children around the world to stand up for the future of our planet. Your parents and grandparents have enjoyed a beautiful home. You and your children deserve to do the same. Destroying our natural resources for money and power is not okay. To our leaders and grown-ups, you are responsible for the planet we will live on when you're gone. Please make it one you can be proud to leave behind for us. Thank you.
There's a 12-year-old activist who says it much better than I ever could. Over to you guys for an excellent day of work on activism and on solutions for water in South Africa. Thank you.
It is a particularly special honor to have the board, the international board president, come to your country as his first country to visit, and we are absolutely proud to be able to host you. Pavan, thank you so much for your encouraging words, your insights, your leadership. I think we are all inspired with your leadership and your message, and we look forward to working with you in future and supporting you in your presidency with WWF. Thank you once again. Talking about paying for lunch, we need to thank the Maslow Hotel. These events are not possible without great partners, and the Maslow Hotel has been an amazing partner for the Living Planet Conference. So we'd like to thank the Maslow not only for we're not easy to get along with. We demand quite a lot of stuff. So the Maslow has been particularly responsive and helpful, not only in terms of providing a service that you're going to enjoy today, but also in terms of sustainability measures we've introduced with them. With all our events, we encourage green events, we encourage sustainability practices, and they really have stood up to the test every year and have been an amazing supporter. So a big thanks to the Maslow Hotel. And now another special guest of honor, which we'd like to welcome to the stage, is the Country Director for WWF Madagascar, Nani Ratsifandri Hamanana. I practiced the month. Nani, I practiced a while for that one.
What was his name?
And Nani, we invited Nani as our African colleague to come impart a leadership message for us. And please help me welcome Nani to the stage.
Thank you, Augustine, and thank you for saying the name very well. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased and very honored to talk to you today on this occasion of the 50th anniversary of WWF in South Africa. So I come from Madagascar, as Augustine explained, and in Madagascar, we believe that the best gift that one can give at a birthday is wisdom. Often it comes in the form of a proverb, and it is intended to serve as a guide to the person for the journey to come. So for my colleagues from WWF South Africa, I'm very humble to share you a little bit of our Malagasy wisdom. And this is the proverb for you. Walk like the chameleon, one eye looking back and the other looking ahead. And I found the chameleon very appropriate for us in WWF. In Madagascar especially, we have more than 60 species, and they're all unique to the island. And so nature did something really wonderful with the chameleon in allowing it to look in front and behind at the same time. So today we celebrate the 50 years of conservation achievements of WWF in South Africa, for South Africa, but I also believe for the whole planet. We have come a long way, and it is really a time to rejoice on our successes, the battles we have won, and the president of WWF South Africa mentioned a few really big, very impressive ones, but also to recognize all those that have fought along with us and made these successes possible. And so thank you to all of us who are here today to celebrate with WWF. I think this is the greatest achievement, and this is a real success, because it shows that throughout those 50 years, WWF in South Africa has been able to mobilize, as Pavan said, and build the constituency for nature and sustainability. So congratulations. But now let's be like the chameleon. And as we rejoice about the past, let's look into the future, what comes ahead of us. And indeed, the theme of the conference today is water, what next? So what next? So of course, we all know water is very precious for us as humans. It meets our very basic needs, but it has also played a very critical role in how societies have been built in the past, and probably also into the future. It's very important for the development of agriculture, livestock, industry, energy, transport, and many others. I don't think there are any economic activities that do not rely on water resources in a way or the other. I live in Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar. And if you were coming to my city on a regular morning, this is what you would see. You would see long files, people queuing Mostly they are women, but sometimes even children. And they're queuing with buckets because they are waiting to get their daily supply of water from public fountain. In Madagascar, half of the population does not have access to adequate water and sanitation. The consequences on health are disastrous. It is estimated that about 14,000 children die every year because of a disease related to poor water and sanitation. If you were still in Antananarivo, at some times of the day or the evenings, you may not be able to charge your phone or use your laptop or watch TV because we have power cuts. Last year, the National Water and Electricity Company issued a press release, and they were explaining that the main hydropower dam was affected by upstream deforestation, erosion, and sedimentation. And because of that, there was not enough water coming to the turbines, and that was the cause of the frequent power cuts. In that press release, they were calling upon the government and the authorities to take urgent action to protect the upstream forest ecosystem from the practice of slash-and-burn agriculture, from practice of fuel wood production, and from gold mining. So if you talk about water, what next for my city and for many others? So take the example of that city of Antananarivo. Its inhabitants have grown from 200,000 in 1960 to now about 3 million. And the projections say that we will be 6 million by 2030. So meeting the basic need for water for the population will be a major challenge. And beyond water, it will be, the real challenge will be to ensure that this population has opportunities to develop stable economic activities and livelihoods. I think the case of my city, Antananarivo, is just one among many others, and especially in Africa. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about our continent, because it is undergoing some big changes. So according to the United Nations Population Division, the population growth in Africa has continued to rise steadily over the past 10, 15 years, unlike the rest of the world. And currently we are 1.2 billion people, but we are expected to double by 2050. By then, half of all the young people on the planet that will be under the age of 18 will live in Africa, and that will be the largest working age population in the world. The continent also had very positive economic growth for many years, actually since 2000. And this has allowed the emergence of a middle class that has moved and is still moving to cities, which are often seen to offer greater economic opportunities. It is predicted that by 2050, Africa will have a higher number of people living in cities than Europe, than Latin America, and than North America. So, if we talk about what next, looking forward, the challenge for African countries will be to satisfy the needs of their burgeoning population for water, but not just water, it's also about food, about energy. The challenge will be to satisfy the requirements of the change in lifestyles from countrysides to cities, and also to be able to provide jobs for this massive youth population. And as they endeavor to do so, the challenge will also be to make sure that the people who are the poorest and the most vulnerable, and some poorest and most vulnerable on the planet are not left behind. Indeed, today, in our rural areas, local communities often still live of subsistence farming, but they too are entitled to more sustainable livelihoods, real opportunities for prosperity for them and for their future generations. So how can Africa and African countries achieve this? I think that the first thing is to really consciously make a choice to start planning for this future right now. Everything that we decide today will have big implications for the future. And then second, I think that the right choice can only be one that puts our resource base at the center. And by resource base, I mean the natural systems, the forests, the wetlands and rivers, the reefs, and their functions, such as maintaining soil quality, we talked about agriculture a lot earlier, supplying water, regulating climate, and many other functions. And put this as the basis, the foundation, and the center of our social and economic development. Without this base, and despite all the technology and all the technical solutions that our human and ingenuity can come with, there is no possible development in the long term. And yet, if you talk about this resource base, Africa has already lost 40% of its wildlife population over the last 40 years. And this is mainly due to the loss of habitat, due to land use changes. At the same time, our ecological footprint has increased by 240% from 1961 to 2008. Well, in very simple terms, it means that our resource base is rapidly declining. And on top of this, climate change is already happening and will continue to happen and continue to affect our natural, social, and economic systems. So going back to my country, which I know best, you are the expert on South Africa. Madagascar, we have a very high rate of deforestation, one of the highest in the world still. And a third of the total land area is already affected by desertification. That means less water and more degraded soils. The island also ranks among the most vulnerable countries to climate change. We are already seeing the decrease in productivity from agriculture and fisheries, the consequences of that on the national economy, and most importantly, on the daily lives of the poor farmers and the fishermen. So how can we put the resource base as a foundation for our social and economic development? I think we need development models that put policies that will reduce the ecological footprint and enhance the capacity to face the effects of climate change, that will invest in the rational management, the maintenance, and the expansion of our ecological infrastructure, just as we do with other infrastructures like roads and bridges and ports. And we need new rules of the games. And those rules need to ensure that the services provided by nature benefit not the minority but the majority, and especially those that most depend on it. In the past and until now, we may have been used to a different model of development, a model that took nature for granted, with thinking that we had an unlimited credit over nature. And I think this really needs to change. But taking this new path will require vision, will require courage, leadership, and innovation. It will require to think differently. It is a path that is different from what we may be used to aspire to. And so we need to question our deepest values as individuals, but also as societies. It also requires the mobilization of every part of that society. We talked about the youth, and I think this will be a huge force for the future, but also civil society, the businesses, the government, individual citizens. Personally, I'm really convinced that this can be done, but that we need to start now. As one of the most developed countries in Africa, I think South Africa can and should lead the way, and the rest of the continent will be looking at you as an example to show us the way towards sustainability. So, for my WWF colleagues in South Africa, again, congratulations on your 50th birth anniversary. And as you embark on a new journey for the next 50 years, I wish you many successes. Be bold, inspire, innovate, and this is my second gift to you for today and to us all. Do not consider the briefness of the days, but think of the length of the years. Thank you for your attention.
As a global network, we spend a lot of our time talking to each other over Skype or Zoom or WebEx. And Nani is one of the colleagues we have endless conversations with in our sharings around the Southern African region and the challenges we face as a network and as society. So Nani, thank you so much for your I think an important reference point for us in South Africa, that it's not just us, there's a broader fight. Similarly to Pavan's story, one of our neighbors, one of our colleagues, one of our countries we work closely with, facing similar challenges, difficult context, difficult situations, but we're all in the same boat together. So thank you once again for your words of encouragement, and please help me thank Nani once again. So if you didn't know, we're also live streaming this event, so around the world, people are tapping in, they're busy linking into the live stream event and watching us as well. We know that there are many WWF International offices that are also beaming in. So we'd like to encourage them as well to go onto the social media sites, post your thoughts, retweet, and please participate through the social media platforms. These are important platforms to continue this conversation. As with any celebration, this one being our 50th, we'd like to encourage you to take the next 3 minutes of your life, your important life, to just spend time reflecting on who you are, as Pavan put it, the people to move us forward, the people to move a country forward, and to be and think about you as the future leaders, the future of our country.
The world is full of strange behavior. There's a whispering song of the wind in the grass. There's a rolling thunder across the savannah. A hope and a dream at the edge of the sky. And your life is a story like the wind. Your life is a story like the wind. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart to hold and stand me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart under African skies. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart. I see the fire in your eyes. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart that beats my name inside. Sometimes I feel that you really know me. Sometimes there's so much you can show me.
Good. And to continue that celebration, please join us for cupcakes over tea. We'll be breaking for tea. We'll start, I think it's about a 15-minute break, and then we'll reconvene. Thank you.